Manifestation is something we all engage in every single day, whether consciously or not. Some excel at it effortlessly, sitting down and declaring, "I want this," as if placing an order at a cosmic restaurant. But here's the truth. There are techniques that can supercharge your ability to manifest your intentions, and yet, before you dive into those techniques, you need to shatter the comforting myths society feeds us. Forget the idea that the universe has a grand plan centered around you. It doesn't. The universe doesn't care who you are, how hard you've worked, or whether you're a good or bad person. There is no divine puppet master pulling the strings of your fate. Once you let go of that comforting but false narrative, something incredible happens. You reclaim your personal power. In that moment of liberation, you'll realize you can create almost anything you set your mind to. But it all starts with belief, raw, unwavering belief. The question then is, how do you start your day to harness that power? What's the very first thing you should do when you open your eyes in the morning? Let's get started. Are the laws of manifestation and attraction interchangeable? A detailed examination of their historical foundations reveals an intriguing development. The Hermetic traditions of the 1st or 2nd century AD, a mystical community that firmly believed in the power of the mind, are where the law of attraction originated. It was they who first used the phrase law of attraction. Centuries later, this concept was expanded upon by a man named Phineas Quimby in the 17th century, setting the foundation for later New Thought ideas. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, people like Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, continued the tradition by constructing the idea that when you set a clear goal and take intentional action, the universe works in your favor. Here's where things get tricky. This philosophy became a beacon for both mystics and pseudo-science enthusiasts alike, and while it's wrapped in a cloak of myth and spiritual fluff, there's a sliver of truth buried in there. The real power of the law of attraction doesn't come from cosmic wish-granting, but from your ability to direct your focus, harness your subconscious, and sharpen your mental clarity. So, is there real power in the law of attraction? Yes, but it's not magic, it's strategy. The way it's commonly used today is nearly synonymous with manifestation, but the crucial difference lies in the method. We all manifest things every day, often inefficiently. People sit, daydream, and wish for anything to happen without knowing how to leverage their brain's true potential. Here's where the science kicks in. Learning how your brain functions and understanding the techniques behind it is like training as an athlete. Think of your mind as a muscle. The first time you try something, you stumble your way through it. Most people fumble their way through life in the same way, unaware of the hidden levers they could be pulling. When you practice manifestation techniques and learn from those who've mastered the process, you refine your approach. You start engaging the cognitive fundamentals behind manifestation, strengthening the neural pathways that make things happen. Instead of mere possibility, you shift to high-probability outcomes. So what drives this process? Your conscious or subconscious mind? That's the million-dollar question. The key to manifestation is imprinting your desires into your subconscious. Simply saying, "I want this," won't cut it. Your conscious mind is constantly bombarded with distractions. In fact, every second, your senses process around 10 million pieces of information. Yet, your conscious brain can only manage 50 to 100 bits of that input. The rest? It's handled by your subconscious, which keeps your body running and maintains your internal balance. But here's the twist. You can access that subconscious powerhouse and make it work for you. By using specific techniques, you can input intentional data directly into your subconscious. When you consciously align even a fraction of those 50 to 100 bits of awareness, you can shift from wishing to creating. In short, manifestation is less about mystical forces and more about precision and practice. Once you understand how to hack your mind's systems, you stop wandering through life aimlessly and start manifesting with power and purpose. The law of attraction teaches that everything begins in the mind, and that's true, but it's just the surface. If you've ever wondered how people seem to access the ability to make things happen, whether facing a physical or mental challenge, it all comes down to one question. How do we gain access to that power? Let's get one thing straight. Energy is real, but it's often buried beneath layers of superstition and overcomplication. For instance, the vibrational energy of the heart can be measured from 5 or 6 feet away. You've likely felt it yourself when meeting someone whose mere presence makes you feel at ease, someone who radiates openness, kindness, and respect. These are the people you gravitate toward because they emit positive energy. Conversely, we all know energy vampires, those who drain you dry with their endless negativity and drama. Their energy feels suffocating. However, a lot of people are unaware that energy, whether it be positive or bad, spreads. Similar to how women who live together for months synchronize their reproductive cycles, your state of being can be influenced by the energies of others around you. You will radiate chaos if you dwell in it. You may have the same impact on other people if you remain composed and grounded. Invariably, the vibration with the strongest intensity prevails. This leads us to an important realization. A lot of our problems, particularly those related to relationships and self-worth, are caused by emotional baggage we've carried around since we were little. If someone was raised in a chaotic household or with an abusive father, that becomes their normal. No matter how harmful, pain becomes ingrained in the brain and connected to affection. Tragically, it's true that being around dysfunction can influence how you perceive your own worth. People are creating what feels familiar rather than what they want, which is why they keep repeating harmful patterns in relationships. Changing those ingrained belief systems isn't easy. Many people turn to destructive coping mechanisms like addiction, not because they're weak, but because they're trying to numb unbearable emotional pain. Sadly, change often requires a painful breaking point, a collapse that forces them to confront their reality. But does change always require suffering? Not necessarily. There's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Some people experience a moment of clarity and choose to rewrite their story without hitting rock bottom. It's rare, but it's possible. I've learned that to manifest, it's essential to have a calm mind, free from external noise. Staying centered amidst the storm is what's called calm mindfulness, a way to silence the chaos and reclaim control. This practice is simple yet powerful. A body scan to relax the nervous system, followed by focused breathing while gazing at a candle. Back then, I didn't know the science behind it, but I felt its immediate effects. By soothing my overactive fight-or-flight response, I was finally able to think clearly and feel at peace in my own skin. This practice shifted my nervous system from a state of survival to one of reflection and creativity. When you're stuck in fight-or-flight mode, your brain only searches for the quickest path to survive. There's no room for dreams or growth, just reaction. But when you calm your mind, you regain access to your brain's executive functions, those that handle problem-solving, imagination, and self-control. It's important to quiet self-criticism and challenge the inner voice that says, "You're not good enough, you're going to fail," or "You don't deserve love." Everyone has that voice, though for some it's louder than others. I've come to understand that this inner critic doesn't tell the truth. It reflects past experiences, not your true potential. If you let that voice lead, you're giving away control of your own life. This is why belief is so critical in manifestation. If you sit every day and tell yourself, "I'm not worthy, I don't deserve love, it's impossible for me to succeed," you're building your own mental prison, brick by brick. The walls get taller, darker, and more impenetrable until you feel utterly powerless, like an external force is controlling your destiny. But here's the truth. No external entity controls your fate. The universe doesn't care whether you succeed or fail. It's indifferent. The power to change your destiny lies within you. When you finally realize that you have the ability to rewrite your story, extraordinary things can happen. So how do you break free from those limiting beliefs and that fight-or-flight survival mode? By recognizing the immense power you carry and refusing to let the critic in your head dictate your worth. Instead of surrendering your control, you can reclaim it through mindfulness, focus, and self-compassion. Once you do, you shift from living a life shaped by your past to building a future shaped by your true potential. That's what manifestation really is, the art of stepping into your power and creating your own reality, one intentional thought at a time. First of all, I'm not here to suggest that this journey ever truly ends. People often look at someone who seems put together and assume they've mastered life. But none of us has everything under control, right? We're all fragile, flawed humans, navigating our personal battles. Some may be further along the path while others are still struggling, but no matter where we are, the power of self-awareness can open doors we never knew existed. And here's the kicker. When you're your own worst critic, you inevitably see others through the same hypercritical lens. This prevents authentic connection and isolates you further. Why does that happen? Because when you're harsh with yourself, you project distrust outward. You start assuming things like, they're probably lying to me, or they'll let me down. That constant loop of negativity locks you into fear-based thinking, blocking the flow of love, trust, and manifestation. What does this internal dialogue of self-criticism do to you? It keeps your body in survival mode, constantly triggering your sympathetic nervous system. This produces inflammatory proteins, weakens your immune system, raises your cortisol levels, and takes a toll on your heart and blood pressure. In short, it chips away at your health, energy, and focus until you're exhausted. I get it. I've been there. Growing up, I didn't feel unloved by my parents. I felt invisible. I carried that anger everywhere. But when I changed the way I viewed myself, everything shifted. I realized that my parents weren't withholding love because they didn't care. It was because they didn't have the tools to heal themselves. Once I understood that, I became more compassionate, not just toward them, but toward myself. Here's something crucial about manifestation. You can't create the life you want if your mind is scattered and your focus fractured. Presence is everything. It's essential to regulate your nervous system, find calm, and stay present. Without silencing the noise in your mind, meaningful growth becomes impossible. True learning, genuine connection, and effective manifestation can't happen if your focus is constantly pulled in every direction. And something fascinating happens when you finally learn to be present. You begin to sense the energy around you and within yourself. Have you ever passed someone on the street and instinctively crossed to the other side because they felt off? You're picking up on something intuitively. But if you're filled with anger and hostility yourself, guess what? You reflect that outward, and others pick up on it. One of the most transformative lessons I learned was this. When you change how you see yourself, you change how you see the world, and the world, in turn, changes how it responds to you. After my time with that incredible mentor, I became more open, thoughtful, and kind. Not just because I wanted to, but because I finally understood that I wasn't the only one in pain. Everyone is carrying something. So what's the biggest obstacle to manifesting the life you want? Fear. But not just any fear. It's the fear rooted in shame, insecurity, and scarcity. This fear keeps you small and reinforces limiting beliefs that block abundance. At its core, manifestation is a choice between fear and love. When you operate from fear, your body remains in survival mode, bracing for impact. But when you choose love, openness, kindness, generosity, you engage your parasympathetic nervous system, the state where creativity and clarity thrive. Think of it like the teachings of the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was once a slave. He said, "I cannot control my external circumstances, but I can control how I respond to them." You've probably met people who've endured hardship, yet remain hopeful and resilient, while others crumble and resign themselves to bitterness. The difference lies in their belief systems. But how does someone shift from despair to hope when they feel trapped? I won't sugarcoat it. Life can be unfair. Some people are born into systems of poverty, oppression, or trauma that make their journey far harder. And no amount of positive thinking can snap you into a perfect life overnight. Even when you do everything right, things may not be perfect, and that's okay. What matters is that you stop handing your power over to your circumstances. If you're chasing external goals, money, success, recognition, without addressing your internal fears and insecurities, you'll reach the finish line and feel emptier than ever. I've been there. I thought that achieving more would erase my shame and make me worthy of love. But every time I hit a new milestone, I found myself even more disappointed. I didn't realize that I held the key to the prison I'd built for myself. Here's the truth. You can manifest the life you dream of. More money, opportunities, success. But if you don't heal what's broken inside, those external achievements won't change how you feel about yourself. In fact, they might magnify your unhappiness. Manifestation isn't just about getting things. It's about becoming the kind of person who can fully embrace abundance without fear. When you shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of trust and self-love, you stop chasing and start creating. The real magic lies not in what you attract, but in who you become in the process, and when you become whole, everything else falls into place. What's the difference between knowing what you want and recognizing what you need? Most people get trapped in what's known as hedonic happiness, the kind that comes from chasing pleasure. The logic goes something like this: if I get this, I'll feel good about myself. But here's the hard truth: that's the worst mindset you can have when you're trying to manifest your best life. Why? Because when you pursue something solely to validate yourself, you're operating from a place of insecurity, driven by fear, the fear of not being enough. And when you approach life through the lens of insufficiency, you unintentionally reinforce that belief, limiting your ability to expand. This kind of self-focused pursuit is fleeting. The high you get from external success or material wins, it never lasts. It's superficial. In contrast, eudaimonic happiness, the kind rooted in purpose, comes from contributing to something larger than yourself. This type of happiness shifts your entire perspective. It's not about what you can accumulate, but about how you can serve, connect, and create meaning. When you learn to look at the world with compassion, you begin to understand what you truly need, not just what you think you want. And here's the magic in that shift. When your focus moves from chasing validation to creating impact, the things you once obsessed over, a bigger house, luxury cars, external praise, stop defining your worth. You may still enjoy those things, but they're no longer a desperate attempt to fill an internal void. Now, don't get me wrong, I've lived both sides of this reality. There was a time when I had it all, or at least what most people would consider it all. During the dot-com boom, my net worth soared to around $80 million. I had Ferraris, Porsches, a villa in Florence, and all the external markers of success. And yet I was miserable. Then the collapse came. Suddenly, I went from having $80 million to being $3 million in debt. But here's the thing. It didn't really feel any different. Whether I was a millionaire or drowning in financial ruin, my self-worth hadn't changed. I thought that achieving wealth would silence my insecurities and prove my worth to the world. And in some ways, I did prove it. People admired my success. But their admiration meant nothing because I didn't believe it. I enjoyed the luxuries, the fast cars, the opulent house, but none of it could fill the space where self-acceptance should have been. Compliments from friends, hollow, accomplishments, empty. I'd built an empire to prove my worth, but deep down, I didn't believe I deserved it. Losing everything forced me into a period of brutal self-reflection. One of the hardest truths I learned during that time was this: when your actions are driven by a need for external validation, look at me, I'm important, I matter. You may achieve success, but it will never feel like enough. Your achievements become empty milestones on a path paved with fear and insecurity. But when I finally shifted my focus from myself to others, everything changed. I stopped striving to prove something and started asking, how can I contribute? The paradox is that when you release the need to chase approval, the universe responds by aligning opportunities that resonate with your higher purpose. In terms of manifestation, this isn't just philosophical, it's physiological. When you shift your mindset from scarcity and fear to purpose and love, you engage your parasympathetic nervous system. This calms your brain, synchronizes your neural networks, and enhances your ability to focus, create, and connect. Suddenly, manifestation becomes less about grinding toward a goal and more about opening yourself up to the flow of abundance. It's important to acknowledge that living with purpose doesn't mean you abandon ambition. It means your ambition is no longer shackled to fear. You can still want success, but the difference is that your sense of self-worth doesn't depend on it. When you pursue goals from a place of inner alignment, you're far more likely to manifest not just what you want, but exactly what you need. Looking back, I see that my earlier pursuits were rooted in the belief that achieving external success would erase my internal wounds. But no mansion, no sports car, no prestigious title could heal what I hadn't addressed within myself. Here's the truth. You can manifest your dreams and reach your goals. But if you don't heal the shame, fear, or insecurity that drives you, those external wins won't change how you feel about yourself. In fact, they might make you feel worse, because they highlight the gap between your public persona and your private pain. When you learn to ground yourself in purpose, to give more than you take, you start creating from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. Your actions become aligned with a deeper truth, and life feels richer and more fulfilling. Manifestation isn't just about what you attract, it's about who you become. When you master that, you stop chasing happiness and start embodying it, and that's when true abundance flows effortlessly into your life. One of the most important lessons I've learned is this: don't get attached to anything. And before you jump to conclusions, no, I'm not perfect. I have my flaws like everyone else. But what I mean is this: the key to true freedom is releasing your grip on the things you think define you. You might say, what about your family, your child or your spouse? What if something happens to them? Of course, I would be devastated. I'm human. But here's the reality. Life is full of disappointments, and many of them come from the attachments we create. I love nice cars. I drive a Porsche. I've worked incredibly hard, and I've given generously to others. I don't feel any guilt about enjoying those things. But here's the truth. If all of it disappeared tomorrow, my mental peace would remain intact. Why? Because I'm no longer imprisoned by what I possess. That's real freedom. If you grow up in poverty, it's easy to believe that money is the key to everything, the thing that will set you free. But what really shackles you isn't just a lack of money. It's your attachment to the idea that wealth will solve everything. When I lost everything, I reached a pivotal moment. I had the choice to either hold on tightly to what little I had left or to give freely. And I gave $30 million to be exact. Most people couldn't understand it. My wife, my friends, they asked, why give away everything? But in giving, I found something priceless. I was no longer bound by the fear of losing. I was free. Here's the question that many people struggle with. Is it wrong to want nice things like a great car, a beautiful house, or $1 million in the bank? The answer: absolutely not. There's nothing inherently wrong with material success or enjoying luxury. But when your entire world revolves around yourself, when your every move is driven by ego and self-gratification, you'll find yourself living an empty life. Think about it. You can wear designer clothes, throw lavish parties, and own the fastest car in the neighborhood, but if every action you take serves only your desires, what's left? You're filling a void that material things can't truly satisfy. I've known people who can't stay faithful to one partner. They're constantly chasing the next beautiful woman, not because they love or care about her, but because she makes them look good. She's a trophy, a symbol of validation. Or the guy who won't show up to an event unless he arrives in a Ferrari because without it, how will people notice him? That's not freedom. It's insecurity wrapped in shiny packaging. It's living for the gaze of others, not for yourself. But here's the good news. You can have it all: a successful career, a beautiful home, luxury and abundance, so long as your life has meaning beyond those things. When your actions are aligned with a purpose greater than yourself, everything shifts. Material success becomes an extension of your journey, not the sole reason for it. I'm not ashamed of my accomplishments or the life I've built. I've worked hard for it and I enjoy it. But I've also learned that joy comes not from what you own, but from what you give. When your goals are tied to something bigger, whether it's serving others, supporting a cause, or creating something meaningful, you're no longer chained to your desires. Manifestation is about abundance, but true abundance isn't measured by numbers in your bank account. It's measured by how free you are from the fear of loss. You can enjoy the finer things in life while staying grounded. The moment you stop defining your worth by what you have, you unlock the ability to live fully and give freely. So, yes, you can want the dream car, the beautiful home, or the thriving business. Manifest your goals, work hard, and celebrate your wins. But remember this, if your happiness depends solely on what you achieve, you'll always be chasing something that slips through your fingers. The key is to manifest from a place of purpose, not ego. When your life holds meaning, everything you manifest becomes an extension of your freedom, not a cage disguised as success. And that's when you experience true abundance, not just in what you have, but in who you've become. One of the greatest obstacles to manifestation is limiting beliefs. But before you can overcome them, you need to understand why they exist and how they hold you back. At its core, it comes down to self-compassion. When you treat yourself with kindness instead of constant criticism, you change your physiology. You shift out of fear mode and transform self-judgment into self-empowerment. Our minds are wired with different networks: the default mode network, DMN, the salience network, the attention network, and the executive control network. Why does this matter? Because the executive control network, the one responsible for executing actions, shuts down when you're gripped by fear, anxiety, or insecurity. It's the network that gives you access to your memories, insights, and creativity, but fear slams that door shut. That's why manifestation isn't just about having an intention. It's about making that intention feel significant on a subconscious level. You have to let it stir something deep within you, something so meaningful that it grabs your brain's salience network, the internal hound always sniffing out relevant opportunities. Let me give you an example. Have you ever been at a loud party where it's hard to hear anything, but the moment someone says your name, you immediately turn around? That's because your identity is woven into that word. Your brain is tuned to it, filtering through the noise to respond. The same thing happens when you make your intention vivid and meaningful. Suddenly your brain starts picking up on opportunities it wouldn't have noticed before. Here's a real example. I was working on a new project and happened to be sitting in a noisy cafe. Amidst all the chatter, I overheard someone discussing something directly related to my project. I introduced myself, and that connection opened doors I hadn't even imagined. This wasn't a coincidence. It was the result of tuning my brain's relevance detector to align with my goals. Manifestation, when done correctly, creates these synchronicities over and over again. But intention alone isn't enough. You need to engage every part of yourself. Write down your goals, read them silently and aloud, visualize them and feel them. Athletes do this all the time. They don't just practice physically, they mentally rehearse every detail of their performance, embedding it so deeply into their brains that success becomes second nature. No one, not the critics, not the doubters, not even the statistics, gets to decide what you're capable of. The only one who can define your potential is you. This is why limiting beliefs is so dangerous. If you believe what others say about you, whether it's praise or criticism, you hand over your power. It's not enough for others to believe in you. You have to believe in yourself. Manifestation requires that belief. But belief isn't passive, it's active. You have to work for it. And that work begins with self-compassion. If you're constantly beating yourself up and waiting for the perfect moment to take action, you're sabotaging yourself before you even start. Stop waiting for tomorrow. Stop thinking you need to be ready before you take the first step. The truth is, the first step is what makes you ready. When you learn to silence the critics, both in your head and in the world, you tap into something extraordinary, the ability to create the life you've dreamed of. You don't need anyone's permission to manifest your destiny. All you need is the courage to believe in your own power. Choose something simple to remind yourself that you are in control. It could be as small as deciding to wake up at 6 a.m. and walk around the block. That's it, just one loop around the block. When you follow through, something powerful happens. You begin rewiring your belief system. You're no longer just someone who wants to change. You're someone who sets a goal and makes it happen. Once you do it consistently, your confidence grows. What starts as a single walk becomes two, then a jog, and before you know it, you're running a marathon. something that once felt impossible. And that is the key. Start small, celebrate those small victories, and let them build momentum. Manifestation isn't about waking up one morning with a perfect life. It's about progress, slow, steady, sometimes frustrating, but real. If you expect everything to fall into place overnight, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Life doesn't work that way. I know this from experience. My own journey has taken decades, not days. But what I've learned, and what I've tried to capture here, is a way to shift your perception of the world and yourself, without the years of pain and struggle that so many of us endure. Books have this incredible ability to deliver exactly what you need at the moment you need it. Sometimes you read a line, a paragraph, a story, and something clicks. You realize, this is what I've been missing. It unlocks a part of you that had been dormant. That's what I've tried to do here. Not just share the science behind manifestation, but intertwine it with real-life stories, like the one about Jim Carrey, who famously wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered long before he ever made it big. Or stories of people I've personally met, ordinary individuals who had extraordinary transformations because they learned to see themselves and their power differently. In actuality, perfection is not necessary to create the life you desire. It calls for self-compassion, patience, and a readiness to start small. Every tiny triumph serves as evidence that you can transform, and you rewrite your identity with every step you take. In the end, such actions result in something remarkable, not only because of your accomplishments, but also because of the person you grow into. Start where you are then. Decide on a straightforward goal, see it through, and rejoice. Every time you do this, you're changing your conviction in your own abilities rather than only acting, and that's the start of real manifestation. To manifest the life you desire, you first need to understand this truth. Your identity, what you believe about yourself, can either empower you or imprison you. The attachments we form around who we think we need to be, what we should have, or what others expect of us can keep us stuck in a cycle of fear, insecurity, and scarcity. Let me ask you this. When you think about success, is it about having more or being more? Many people confuse the two, chasing external validation, money, luxury, or status, as if accumulating things will finally bring them peace. But here's the reality. Without a deeper sense of purpose, those things are hollow victories. I once met a man during a leadership seminar. Let's call him Daniel. He was a senior executive who had built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up. From the outside, he was the definition of success, charismatic, respected, and surrounded by every luxury you could imagine. But during a small group session, Daniel's voice broke as he admitted something. "I've never felt free." Everyone was stunned. He continued, "My entire life, I've been terrified of losing what I've built. I stay up at night thinking about it. Even when I win, all I can think is, what if this is the last win?" I asked him, "When was the last time you felt free?" He paused, and for a long time, he said nothing. Then, finally, he smiled faintly. "When I was 12, he said, I used to ride my bike to the edge of town past the fields and watch the sunset. No expectations, no deadlines, just me, the road, and the sky." I looked at him and asked, "When did you stop riding?" Daniel's story resonated because so many of us stop riding when life gets complicated. We think success is about building higher walls to protect what we have, status, money, and reputation. But in reality, those walls can feel like a cage. I told him, you don't need to abandon everything you've built, but you do need to find the version of yourself that existed before fear took over. You don't have to run the whole company with the weight of the world on your shoulders. You just need to remember the boy who loved the ride. Weeks later, I got an email from Daniel. He had booked a trip to his childhood hometown. The last line of his email read, "The sunsets are just as beautiful as I remember." His story was a reminder that no matter how far we climb, true freedom comes from within, not from what we achieve, but from the moments when we let ourselves simply be. In a talk I gave once, a woman raised her hand, tears streaming down her face. She shared how, as a child, her father constantly told her she would never amount to anything. Despite those words, or maybe because of them, she dedicated her life to proving him wrong. She became a nurse, earned a doctorate, and became a senior executive at a hospital chain. By all accounts, she was extraordinary, but at what cost? She woke up every day, driven by the same internal voice telling her she wasn't enough. Now imagine if her father had said, "You're incredible, you can do anything, I'm so proud of you." How different would her life have been? Would she have still achieved greatness, but from a place of love and connection rather than lack and pain? The truth is, we can't always know. Pain can be a powerful motivator, but it can also be a heavy burden. It can drive us to succeed, but rob us of joy in the process. I've seen this play out firsthand. When I was on my school's rowing team, my first coach was a harsh man who yelled at us constantly. I hated every practice. I worked harder out of spite, but it drained me. Then we got a new coach, an Olympic gold medalist with an extraordinary presence. He believed in us and coached us with encouragement and calm. He'd pull me aside and say, "You need to work on this, but I know you've got it in you to excel." The difference was night and day. Instead of working out of fear and resentment, I began to thrive because I believed in myself. This is the essence of manifesting. Belief. But that belief isn't just about what you want. It's about who you believe you are and what you believe you deserve. Here's the challenge. So many of us are trapped by the voices in our heads, echoes of past criticism, rejection, and fear. We carry these stories into adulthood and let them define what we think we can or can't do. But manifestation isn't about proving your worth to anyone else. It's about releasing the need to prove anything at all. When you let go of attachment to what you think defines you, be it money, success, or other people's approval, you create space for something more meaningful. Freedom. When you stop chasing things for the sake of external validation and start aligning your actions with purpose and self-love, you shift your entire reality. It doesn't mean you can't desire wealth or success. You can have all of that, and you should, but only if it's coming from a place of authenticity, not fear. When you manifest from a place of true belief in yourself, you're no longer running towards something to fill a void. You're building a life that reflects who you already know yourself to be. So, how do you start? Choose to believe differently. You are not the sum of someone else's expectations or judgments. Release the fear of failure. It's not failure that defines you. It's how you rise after it. Start small. Manifestation is about momentum. Celebrate the small wins and let them remind you that you're in control. Ultimately, manifestation isn't about what you get. It's about who you become in the process. When you redefine your identity and claim your power, you're no longer playing someone else's game. You're living life on your terms. And that is where true abundance begins. When you can enter a state of flow, you create abundance effortlessly, not by grinding yourself into exhaustion to reach the top. Instead of collapsing after a hard-won achievement and saying, "Well, I'm glad that's over," you want to sit back and say, "This feels amazing, I'm so grateful I did this." It's a completely different experience. Wouldn't you rather have a life fueled by positivity and purpose, rather than one driven by fear and pressure? Unfortunately, in today's corporate culture, fear is often used as a motivator. Many leaders believe that by instilling fear, they'll push people to perform better. There's a story I often share about a manager, let's call her Laura, who led a high-performing sales team in New York. On paper, her team hit every target, often surpassing expectations. But beneath the numbers, things were unraveling. One day, the company conducted an anonymous feedback survey. The results were brutal. Working for Laura is exhausting. She's unapproachable and micromanages everything. The pressure is unbearable. When Laura read the feedback, she was crushed. She went home and told her husband, expecting him to be shocked. Instead, he sighed and said, "I've tried to tell you this for years, but you've always brushed it off." That was her wake-up call. She could have dismissed the feedback as ungrateful complaints or doubled down on control, but instead she made a different choice. Laura spent the next year in leadership coaching, learning active listening, mindfulness, and the power of trust. She even attended workshops focused on emotional intelligence and compassion. A year later, another survey was conducted, and this time the results were extraordinary. Laura makes me feel seen and supported. I trust her completely. She inspires us to do our best. Her team's performance soared, not because they feared failure, but because they felt empowered to succeed. Laura's story is a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about exerting control. It's about fostering connection. When leaders trade fear for empathy, they don't just improve the numbers, they transform lives. There's a story I often share about a manager, let's call her Laura, who led a high-performing sales team in New York. On paper, her team hit every target, often surpassing expectations. But beneath the numbers, things were unraveling. One day, the company conducted an anonymous feedback survey. The results were brutal. Working for Laura is exhausting. She's unapproachable and micromanages everything. The pressure is unbearable. When Laura read the feedback, she was crushed. She went home and told her husband, expecting him to be shocked. Instead, he sighed and said, "I've tried to tell you this for years, but you've always brushed it off." That was her wake-up call. She could have dismissed the feedback as ungrateful complaints or doubled down on control, but instead, she made a different choice. Laura spent the next year in leadership coaching, learning active listening, mindfulness, and the power of trust. She even attended workshops focused on emotional intelligence and compassion. A year later, another survey was conducted, and this time the results were extraordinary. Laura makes me feel seen and supported. I trust her completely. She inspires us to do our best. Her team's performance soared, not because they feared failure, but because they felt empowered to succeed. Laura's story is a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about exerting control, it's about fostering connection. When leaders trade fear for empathy, they don't just improve the numbers, they transform lives. That's the power of releasing attachment to control and embracing flow. One of the keys to manifesting your desires is to release your grip on specific outcomes and timelines and stay open to the unexpected magic that life can bring. Why is this important? Because the moment you become overly attached to one version of how things should happen, you set yourself up for disappointment. Manifestation rarely looks the way you imagined. Why? Because there are countless unseen factors at play. What seems like a failure on the surface could actually be the best possible outcome in disguise. Your unconscious mind often knows what you need better than your conscious mind does. But if you resist that process, you'll create your own unhappiness. It's like having a rigid timeline for your goals. Life doesn't follow our schedules. For example, I've been planning a World Compassion Festival for 13 years, a massive global event. Has it happened yet? No. Am I disappointed? Not at all. I know it will happen when the pieces align. Just the other day, I was speaking with a friend, and our conversation naturally shifted to compassion. Suddenly, he said, "Why don't we team up and bring this festival to life?" That's the magic of synchronicity. Unexpected connections and opportunities tend to appear when you remain open and patient. If I had spent the last decade lamenting, "Why hasn't it happened yet? I'm such a failure," I'd be paralyzed by self-doubt. Instead, I choose to believe that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Even if the festival doesn't happen exactly as I envisioned, I know that something extraordinary will come of it. Manifestation is like picturing your ideal partner, someone with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a kind heart. Then someone walks into your life who has all those qualities, except they're a brunette. If you cling to your original image, you might miss out on the person who's perfect for you simply because you were attached to the specifics. So how do you prepare yourself for a daily rhythm of manifestation? Is there a mantra, a thought process, or a specific action you should take when you wake up? Here's what works for me. It may not be for everyone, but it sets the foundation for manifestation. Every morning, well, most mornings, I wake up and remind myself of one thing. I am here to be of service. This simple mindset shift changes everything. When your focus is on contributing, helping, and uplifting others, you're not just manifesting for yourself, you're inviting abundance into the world, and when you do that, the universe responds in ways more beautiful and surprising than you could have ever planned. So as you start your day, don't just ask what you want from life. Ask what you're willing to give. Let go of rigid expectations and stay open to the magic. Manifestation isn't just about creating the life you desire. It's about trusting that life's wonders will arrive in ways beyond what you imagined. When we talk about chasing goals and attaching ourselves to specific outcomes, it's important to recognize this. Achieving a goal feels euphoric. There's no denying that. It's incredible to reach the finish line and savor that sense of accomplishment. But that feeling is temporary. You can't live in a constant state of euphoria. Likewise, disappointments, the failures, the setbacks, the moments that feel like your world is falling apart, are also temporary. That's why emotional stability is key. You can't let yourself be consumed by either extreme. If you reflect on it, what teaches you the most in life? It's not the happiest moment. It's the challenges, the pain, the obstacles you've had to overcome. Those moments build resilience. Trying to avoid them entirely is not only unrealistic, but it also robs you of the lessons that make you stronger. Forgiveness is another important component. You feel heavy when you have unresolved feelings about a person or incident. You have physical, emotional, and mental effects each time you relive that memories. Forgiveness is the act of letting go of the weight of what has happened, not forgetting or justifying it. You release yourself when you let go. Then there is appreciation. Gratitude is a simple yet powerful discipline that may change your life. Numerous studies have demonstrated that rewiring your brain for optimism can be achieved by keeping a gratitude notebook or by writing down 3 things for which you are grateful each night. Most of us lose sight of our true blessings. Less than $2.50 per day is the daily income for half of the world's population. Take a moment to process that. The truth is terrible. As a neurosurgeon, I've witnessed people's perspectives change under the most trying conditions. After an accident, I've had patients who felt as though their lives had been ruined and became paraplegic. I'd tell them, "Let me take you to the next room." There, they'd see a quadriplegic patient, dependent on a ventilator, unable to move anything. Suddenly they'd say, "Okay, I get it." Perspective is everything. You have the power to choose how you view the world. Gratitude, humility, and compassion are essential practices, not just for manifestation, but for living a meaningful life. Even for someone in a respected profession, like neurosurgery, humility is a challenge. You have to remind yourself that you're no more important than anyone else. True greatness lies in integrity, kindness, and the principles you live by. Integrity means being accountable and just. Kindness means showing up as a good human being, not for recognition, but simply because it's who you are. And above all, there's love. Love is the force that ties everything together. I once gave a talk during a white coat ceremony, and afterward, I received an email from a woman who had read my book, Into the Magic Shop. She told me, "I'm the spiritual director of the largest homeless shelter in the US. I was burned out and ready to quit. Your words gave me the strength to go back." Then a month later, she emailed me again. "I shared your story with my best friend's daughter, Ginny. She's 12 years old and made a set of 10 wooden beads, each representing a core principle of compassion. She added a golden bead as a symbol of the golden rule. Would you mind if we sell these to support the shelter?" I said, "Of course." Months later, she sent another message. This time, she told me she had been invited to meet the Dalai Lama at an event I was hosting. She couldn't afford the trip, so I hired her as a consultant and invited her to bring her beads. She met her hero, and the beads were blessed by His Holiness himself. A few years later, I was invited to Archbishop Desmond Tutu's birthday celebration in Cape Town. I couldn't attend, so I asked her to go in my place. For her, it was an entirely new world. For me, it was a small gesture, but for her, it was life-changing. This story demonstrates how even seemingly insignificant actions, like holding a door open, smiling at a complete stranger, or purchasing food for someone in need, may have a significant impact. His Holiness frequently states, "Be compassionate if you wish to make other people happy." Compassion is the key to happiness. Not only is compassion a moral quality, but also has scientific support. Compassionate actions trigger your parasympathetic nervous system, which enhances heart health, lowers cortisol levels, and reduces inflammation. Positive emotions are reinforced by the activation of the brain's reward centers. However, self-compassion is the most difficult compassion to cultivate. That's where a lot of us have trouble. We frequently treat others with kindness, yet treat ourselves harshly. This brings me to the core of manifestation. When you combine self-compassion with purpose, gratitude, and perspective, you align yourself with the flow of life. You stop fighting for control and start allowing it. So, if you were to ask me what 3 truths I would leave behind, they would be these. Believe in yourself. You are more powerful than you've been taught to believe. Care for others. True abundance comes from lifting others as you rise. Let go of attachment. Life rarely unfolds exactly as you planned, but when you release your grip, you create space for something even greater to emerge. Manifestation is not just about creating a life of success, it's about creating a life of meaning. When you live with love, compassion, and purpose, everything else flows. And that is how you manifest a life that not only fulfills you, but also leaves the world better than you found it.